I saw him for the first time when the storm was at its worst. The rain was so heavy that it felt like the earth itself was crying. People ran for shelter, their umbrellas flipping inside out from the wind. That's when he walked in, calm and unbothered, as though the chaos outside didn't touch him. He looked like a prince, and it turned out he really was. My name is Ada. I'm nobody special, just a waitress at a small cafe in Lagos. That day, I was working the evening shift, cleaning tables and watching the rain pour through the window. Business was slow because of the weather. When the door opened and he walked in, it was like something out of a movie. He was tall, with broad shoulders and smooth dark skin that seemed to glow under the dim lights. He wasn't dressed fancy, just a simple white shirt and jeans, but there was something about him that made everyone in the cafe stop what they were doing. Even Mrs. Is, who was always glued to her phone, looked up. He shook off the rain, ran a hand through his short hair, and smiled at me. Good evening, he said, his voice deep and steady. Do you mind if I stay here until the rain stops? I nodded, too stunned to speak. He picked a seat by the window, and I brought him a menu. As I set it down, he looked up at me. His eyes were warm, like the kind of fire that doesn't burn but draws you closer. What's your name? He asked. Ada, I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, Ada. He ordered tea and sat there quietly, watching the rain. It wasn't until he finished his drink and paid that he told me who he was. My name is Tunde, he said, handing me the money. Tunde Adebayo. My family, we are from Ibadan. He said it casually, like it was nothing, but I knew the name. Everyone did. The Adebayos were one of the most powerful families in Nigeria. His father was a king. For weeks, I didn't see him again. I thought about him often, though. I told myself it was silly. He was a prince. I was just a girl working at a cafe. But then, one evening, he came back. This time, he wasn't alone. The little girl, no older than 5, clung to his hand. Hello, Ada, he said, smiling like we were old friends. This is my niece, Amara. She insisted on meeting the lady who makes the best tea. I laughed, unsure of what to say. Amara was shy at first, hiding behind him, but he coaxed her forward. They stayed for over an hour, and when they left, he asked if he could see me again. Why? I blurted out, immediately regretting it. His smile faded, replaced by a serious look. Because I like you, he said simply. From that day, Tunde and I began to spend time together. He wasn't what I expected. He didn't act entitled or distant. Instead, he was thoughtful and kind. He listened when I talked, and he treated everyone with respect, from the market women to the security guards. We didn't have it easy. People whispered when they saw us together. Some said I was after his money. Others said I wasn't good enough for him. But Tunde didn't care. One night, as we sat on the beach watching the waves, he took my hand. I don't care what people think, he said. I've spent my whole life living up to other people's expectations. With you, I can just be myself. Our time together deepened. Tunde was open with his feelings, a refreshing honesty that made me fall harder for him. He would call late at night, just to hear my voice, or surprise me at the cafe with flowers. One evening, he showed up with a basket of fresh mangoes, saying he remembered how much I liked them. It was the little things he did that left me breathless. He would tell me about his childhood, growing up in a palace but longing for simplicity. I envied kids who could play on the street, he confessed one night as we lay on a blanket under the stars. Everything was planned for me, my education, my future. Meeting you feels like the first choice I've made just for myself. I'd never felt so seen, so cherished. But with that love came challenges. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned to find Tunde waiting outside my apartment. His face was tense. What's wrong? I asked. My family, he began, hesitating. They don't approve. They think you're beneath me. The words stung, but I could see how much it hurt him to say them. And what do you think? I asked quietly. He stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands. I think you're everything I've ever wanted. And I'm not letting you go. The weeks that followed were intense. Tunde's family tried to intervene, sending him on trips and arranging introductions to women they deemed suitable. But he always came back to me. Our love became a rebellion, a statement that we would choose each other no matter what. One evening, he surprised me with a getaway. Pack a bag, he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. He drove us to a small resort by the river, away from the city and its prying eyes. We spent the days exploring the lush landscape, laughing and talking, and the nights wrapped in each other's arms. It was there, under the soft glow of lantern lights, that we shared our deepest fears and desires. I want to build a life with you, he whispered one night, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. A life where we are free to love without limits. Tunde introduced me to his world, slowly but surely. He took me to charity events, where he used his influence to make a difference. Seeing him in his element, commanding respect and admiration, made me fall even deeper. But he also embraced my world. He helped me cook jollof rice in my tiny kitchen, danced with me to old high-life songs, and sat with me on my apartment floor eating suya wrapped in newspaper. Our intimacy grew, not just in stolen kisses and whispered promises, but in the quiet moments of understanding and connection. One night, as we lay tangled in each other, he looked at me with an intensity that made my heart race. Marry me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Tears filled my eyes as I nodded, unable to speak. He pulled me into a kiss, sealing a promise that we would face whatever came together. The announcement of our engagement sent shockwaves through his family and the community. The media had a field day, painting me as an outsider who didn't belong in his world. But Tunde's unwavering support kept me grounded. He stood by my side through it all, holding my hand tightly as we faced the storm together. His family eventually came around, though it took time. His mother invited me to tea one afternoon, a small gesture that spoke volumes. Tunde loves you, she said, her voice soft but firm. And that's what matters. Our wedding was a blend of cultures, a celebration of love that defied expectations. We danced late into the night, surrounded by friends and family who had come to support us. As Tunde toward me around the dance floor, his eyes never leaving mine, I felt a happiness so pure it brought tears to my eyes. Today, we live in a modest home filled with love and laughter. Tunde still visits the palace, but his heart is here with me and our son. Every time I see them together, I'm reminded of the storm that